Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today on the Higher Ground podcast, where we have a special treat for you. I have two friends joining us. My friend Dori Albert, who's the CEO of Tryton TC and Spyglass MTG, as well as Mike Bousch, the Chief Operating Officer for that company as well. We've known each other for quite some time, working at least two different companies together, and I'm very happy to have them join us today. And you as well. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as we did having the conversation. So whether you're preparing for an interview, seeking a promotion, or just curious about what's in the minds of hiring managers, executives, and interview candidates, this podcast may be for you. I hope so. So join us as we explore real career journeys, one story at a time. And if you do like the show, please like and subscribe. Apparently the algorithms really like it themselves when you do that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Oh, and just a reminder that the views expressed on the Higher Ground podcast are the personal opinions of our guests and myself, your host, and do not necessarily represent those of their employers, past or present. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Higher Ground podcast. I'm very happy to say I've got two of my friends, Dori Albert and Mike Bousch, who join us from Tryton TC and Spyglass. Dori is the president and CEO of Spyglass and Tryton, and Mike is the chief operating officer for those organizations. But I think it's always best to have y'all introduce yourselves. And sometimes I can actually pull off y'all, but probably not very often. So please, over to you.
Well, thanks for having us, Tom. We worked together at a few different companies in the past. And yeah, I am the president and CEO of the two companies. My background is predominantly in consulting. I kind of came up through the sales rank into management, and from then on, and that's me.
There you are.
Mike? Yeah, good to see you as well, Tom. It's great to be here. Good to be here with, you said, with people you've been working with for a while. It's the three words in career management, or network, and
yeah,
right?
True. Yeah, I think we'll start off with piece of advice number one, right?
Yeah, there you go. I figured I'd throw that right in the beginning. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yep. So back to you.
What I'd like to start off with some very controversial questions just to kind of warm us up, right? So this or that, and there's no wrong answer, maybe. Pizza or bagels? It's a typical New York question, but let's go with
yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. Pizza. Yeah.
Okay, good. We're off to a start with agreement. At some point, I'm going to go back over the recordings and do the actual poll. But all right, how about?
Would have been harder if you said pizza or donuts, by the way.
Oh, that's interesting.
No,
okay.
Still pizza.
Yeah, all right. That might make it more controversial. How about beer or wine?
Neither. I don't drink anymore.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But back in the day, I would have said wine for sure.
You would have said wine. Okay.
I'll stick with beer.
Beer. That's generally my answer. Yellow cab or Uber?
Uber.
It's an Uber world, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to be the trend. I don't know. I take the train sometimes. I'm like, cab's right there. Yeah. But okay, here's one for a different flavor: Caribbean or Caribbean?
Caribbean.
I'll second that too. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I was waiting for you to say it, Mike. Dog or cats?
Dog. Definitely dog.
Now you know why Dori and I work together.
There is a right answer.
We're dog people. We're pizza people.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Last one: stay at home or takeout? Sorry.
I was like, those aren't the stuff.
Yeah. No. This is why editing is important. Stay at home or dine out?
Got it. Depends on the day, but I would probably pick dine out.
Okay.
And I'll disagree on one. Stay at home.
Stay at home?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how my husband goes too. So there we go.
That's as well. Yeah. Excellent. So let's jump right in. So I'd love to hear about your most memorable, best, worst, or funniest interview you've ever had.
Well, that's funny. We were talking about this, Mike and I, beforehand, and we're like, what are we going to give for that? Because I think between the two of us, we have Oh, ironically, not gone on that many interviews because most of our jobs have been through people that we know. So I wouldn't consider those official, what you're probably talking about type of interviews. Um, so the one that I came up with was an interview like going way back because isn't this audience mostly recent grads that you're trying to help get
It's
jobs?
a mix, especially given all the cuts that are happening now. I think it should apply for anyone, but yeah, generally, I think people who are looking to change jobs.
So I was going back to my first real professional interview, which happened to be for college.
Hmm.
So I had chosen a college. It was actually Tufts, and I wanted to go to Tufts. So it was like my top school. And so it was the first one that I had kind of gone through the process with. And I ended up doing an alumni interview. And I
Hmm.
won't say it's his fault, but the guy that interviewed me was kind of not the nicest.
Hmm.
And he was pretty rigid. And I'm a pretty warm person. So I was having a really hard time warming up to this person.
Yep.
But it was a real lesson learned for me because my parents hadn't really prepared me. I think, I'm not going to date myself, but going back several years,
Let's just say a few
we
years
didn't
back.
get the kind of prep that these
Hmm.
kids are getting today. We also didn't have a lot of the pressures that they have, but we
So,
didn't get the level of prep that these kids are getting. So I hadn't really been prepped to think through the biggest challenge in my life or the
mm,
most influential person in my life or, all these really big questions that they come
yeah.
at you with these interviews. And I was telling Mike, I'm like, I still remember it to this day because I'm a pretty competitive person. I was so used to like winning, winning, winning. And I go into this interview and it was just one question after another that I felt like I was bombing because all I
So
could
good.
think of, he asked me something about, I think it was something about like bring up something about teamwork that you had just done. And so I would happen to be, I think what a lot of especially younger kids will do is think of the most recent thing that they've been doing, right?
Sure, sure.
The most recent team they were on, or I had actually happened to be in a play. And so I was talking about the play and I was talking about how, we had put on this great production. I was really proud of it. And then he comes up with like the most recent challenge. And then I'm like, oh, well, I had to do a harmony in this play. Like it was definitely I couldn't get out of my way with like the same thing of questioning. And I kept thinking, oh God. And this guy was not friendly. So he's going down this question. I could tell it's not going well. It's not going on. Needless to say, I got waitlisted at Tufts and I actually did not get off the wait list,
Oh,
which worked
no.
out because I was going to go there to be pre-vet,
Mm,
which looking back at my little self, how I thought that was a good idea, I have no idea. But anyway, so the
interesting.
one thing that I take from that, looking back on it, is that you really have to prepare for interview
Mm,
and have an idea of what the questions are going to be. Ironically, those questions that were hard college questions are kind of the same questions you get asked a lot of times in a regular work interview.
that's right.
But when I think back about interviews that I've actually have to do, that one always stands out because I remember thinking, man, I could have taken the time and I really wanted to go there. And I don't know why I didn't. I just think I didn't have the advice or
Mm.
knew that that's what I needed to do. But that was where I stood with that one.
And it's so tough when your interviewer doesn't warm up. You
Oh
know,
yeah, he was tough.
yeah, it's hard, especially especially at that age. You're at not
Yeah,
the combination of the age and the toughness, and this is so important to me. And yeah,
yeah.
how about yourself, Mike?
So she got me thinking about first interviews, and it was again, this was literally my first interview in college. This was in the career placement at school, right, where they brought up the consulting company I ended up working for brought up people to interview us, and so you go in and again don't know what much we're going to be asked about, but I got a bunch of these questions and from the senior partner that was there interviewing, and they were all teamwork related. And so, having been on the rowing team in college, answer number one was, well, on the crew team, we did this. And answer number two was that. And we get to answer number three. And I looked at her with kind of a wink, was like, I'm going to go with crew here.
That's great.
And so I got a little bit of a smile at her, not much. He had a pretty good poker face. And again, she ended up being my mentor later in my career. But what was funny is 5 or 6 years later, I was in our office cleaning out boxes for whatever we were doing something, and we found these files, and somebody was like, "Yeah, those are the old back in the day when you used to have physical interview forms, right?" I found the form she used that day, and up in the corner there was a little note that said, "Hire this guy with a smiley face in a circle." And I'm thinking back on it, I'm pretty sure it was that moment, right? So maybe the lesson there is show some personality. Obviously, going to a consulting firm, you're getting judged on, we used to have literally used to say, like, is this the kind of person I could sit down and have a drink with? If you're looking for people with consulting.
Very true.
So
the tough
really,
guy, not so much.
Yeah.
Clearly not. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're watching, we know you. Yeah, that must have been so nice though to see that. Like, okay, you could tie it to, even if it wasn't the event, it was like that moment. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah,
funny.
It's funny. We were always coached, especially in the banks, not to write anything, on the actual resume itself, but it was like, a separate document, and it was like, why would that be? I'm like, just don't put it on the document. I'm like, okay, don't ask too many questions, I guess.
Yeah.
So what was like the weirdest question you ever asked or were asked?
Yeah, we talked about this one too. So one of the weird ones that is just a turnoff as someone hiring. One time I was asked very early into the interview, I think I was going over our benefits, and we have a unlimited vacation benefit, which at the time was kind of a novel concept. I think it's kind of caught on since then. And we've now learned we have to explain what that means, because some people, especially the younger kids, take that fairly literally.
No. Sorry, I'm not from on.
We've learned how to quantify what unlimited vacation with your manager's approval actually means.
Yes.
So I was explaining this to someone that was interviewing, and their question to me was like, oh, do you have a sabbatical program? Because my friend just went on a 6-month sabbatical, and he was there for 5 years, and it was a program that they had, and he had a sabbatical. Now, not an unfair question, but a really weird question, considering, like, you haven't even told me really about yourself. You haven't. I'm still talking about the company. It was like right in, and that one just stood out to me, because I will say, like, check yourself when you're going to ask a question like that, and don't give the impression that you want to go on a 6-month vacation before you've even started the job. Does not send the right message.
Yeah. Right. The message is, I really want to focus my well-being and plan for the 6 month. Yeah. I don't know if companies still do that. I don't know how popular sabbaticals are, but definitely a weird question to ask out of the gate.
Some do, because obviously he had a friend. I know sure. Some of the tech companies will do that. It's like something that they will give. I don't think it's 6 months now, though. I think they give them like 5 weeks or 6 weeks. So they'll give them like an extended vacation. We don't do that. Just for the record, if
anyone's listening,
our companies. We're consultants. We actually need to bill to make money.
Right. That's kind of how the engine works, and without the engine, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Got it. How about yourself, Mike? Anything stand out? Anything particular?
Yeah, a lot of those types of things, right? People are asking about benefits or things that are just not, I really appreciate it when people ask questions, insightful questions around the business, right? They're really trying to find not just about their job or what the comp is, whatever, but when they get into it, really try to understanding the business. But yeah, when people get off topic on worrying about very either tactical or, those types of things, do I get sick time or, just really things that are like, really, this is how you want to spend you've got 5 minutes here at the end of the interview asking me important questions, and that's top of your mind. It's typically a turnoff, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I usually try to cut, especially I spend so little time. Like, I'll tell them, like, here's the job, here's what we're looking for, right? Get into I'll talk for the first 5, maybe 7 minutes.
Always,
okay, ask me whatever questions you want to ask me, right? And you think you learn so much from that, but like you said, if the first question is, how many commas are in my salary?
Yeah. Well, we had some thoughts on that too, which we can get to.
Well, please share. I'd love to hear.
Well, on the salary, I think, you're always told not to ask in the first interview about salary or talk about it. I think that's pretty common advice. But we actually feel differently than that. I mean, we think that that's something that should be discussed, because honestly, if you have a salary expectation way over here and our salary range is over here, which should have been talked about in this pre-screening process, but
that's where I was going to go. Yeah.
Like sometimes it does come up, or people, have blinders on because they're really excited about something. I have no problem having conversation and setting boundaries, because I think you should know if you're going to invest your time in an interview cycle, you should know that it's in the strike zone that you want to be in.
100%. Yeah. But I would think, like you said, you'd have that as the recruiter call, the pre-screen, or before you're actually.
We do find it just doesn't always get flushed out completely. And so I have no problem if someone wants to ask, or if they want to say, and I have no problem saying, yeah, that's not in our range. So if you want to keep talking, we can, but
more realistically, no, but I think that's good. Like at this point, let's save each other whatever the remaining 20 minutes if we're off by that comma that I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all it is, right? Are we in the right ballpark? Okay, let's move on with more important things, and we'll come back.
Yeah. There's a degree of negotiability, but like the there's also not. So it's better to be. I think it's definitely better to be upfront about that.
And you asked about a funny interview.
Yeah.
I just had one pop into our head. So this is kind of a little bit of a longer story. I'll try to make it brief.
Yeah, no, there's no rush. We're good.
We had someone interview. So we are a consulting firm with people all over the U.S. We're predominantly in the Northeast, but we do have people in different states. We're very specialized on the Spyglass side, where we are very specific on Microsoft technology. So that makes it difficult to find, always in the same state or wherever, because you kind of have to go where the pockets of the skills are. So over the last 6 years, we've really expanded out where we're hiring people. So a lot of our interviews tend to be like this, online in video. And so we had an interview. We interviewed a candidate. They went through all the process. It happened to be a female. I connected, thought we had great interview, great skills. Everybody liked this person. We're very clear when we interview people. Well, one, we do ask them, can we take a picture of you? Because we want to put it with your file.
Sure.
No problem. I've never had anyone say no, so that's good. But we're very clear with people that because our business is mostly virtual, that we expect you to be on camera, that like 90% of our meetings are on camera. This is how we interact face to face. So that's an expectation. So we ended up hiring this person, and the first week that they started, we go through a set of things where we actually ask for their profile, we get a write-up on them, and we send an email out. So in parallel with this person starting, my marketing person's reaching out to them saying, okay, I need your profile picture and write this up on your hobby.
Yeah, your bio or background or whatever.
So this person starts, and I think we had an assignment for them to go to. So we start bringing them in, and they're not going on video. And I think Mike ended up talking to this individual saying, like, it's a requirement, a reminder. We told you this in the interview process. You have to go on video. What was the excuse, Mike? I forget.
Oh, it was moved to a new neighborhood, construction going on, bad network connections, all kinds of things that you really
Wi-Fi is not working.
Dog ate my homework.
So this continues. And so I start to get more and more irritated as the week goes on, week number 1, because day 2 comes, no video.
And we should mention that part of our onboarding strategy is we have a whole bunch of onboarding meetings we do day 1, but we save a meeting with Dori for the end of the week. So it's nice at the end of your first week just to have a check-in to say, how'd your first week go with us, right? So that's,
you'll have feedback.
This was a progression during the course of the week, meet day after day, not going on video. And finally me on Wednesday or Thursday saying, listen, you're going to be on with the president on Friday. You need to be on video.
Yes. Okay. There was no getting on this call with me and not being on video. Like, I don't care if you need to go to Starbucks or you need to go to wherever, you need to be able to get on video. So this person that Friday comes, and also I'm getting feedback during the week that, she's really quiet. She's not speaking up. So my radar is up now. So on Friday, she gets on video, and I'm like, that is not the same person that I interviewed. No. I was like, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 90% sure this is not the person that I interviewed. So I'm talking to her, and even then, so I start asking questions, and the woman looks like in an office, okay? Like an office with, drop ceilings and computers on both sides. And I'm like, where are you working out of? Oh, out of my apartment. And I'm like, you have an office in your apartment? Is it like Wi-Fi room? And she's like, no, it's just my apartment. I'm like, oh, how many kids do you have? Because I had asked the other woman how many kids. So she's kind of answering and scrambling and
let me check my notes.
Those answers right. Yep. So I took a screenshot of this person because I couldn't do it while I was talking to her, obviously, right? So we get off, and I very quickly call Mike, and I'm like, danger, I think we have a problem here. So I pull up
Wow.
the two pictures, and I will say women can be tricky, like, slightly different hairstyle, same color hair,
Yeah,
whatever. A lot of
yeah,
the guys were like, "Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure." I'm like, I'm pretty sure. I'm like 90% sure, guys. So then we kept saying, "All right, where's your Instagram picture?" Oh, actually, we had already sent that out, like the welcome, but I
yeah,
hadn't looked at it because we get so many emails every day. So I'm like, Mike, let's go pull up the welcome.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we go pull up the welcome email, and the picture in that is literally an Instagram model. Like it was like that was clearly not either of the two people that are in this picture. So
Oh my
we
God.
have picture number one, picture number two, picture
So
number
we're spending
three.
our Friday afternoon doing forensic analysis on 3 pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where AI can be helpful, right? It's like, tell me if these two people, is this a match? Wow.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that was a pretty short career with Spyglass.
That's
Yes. Yes.
wild. That's wild.
Crazy. I
I,
highly recommend people don't do that, or the quiet
yeah.
quitting, or any of this crap that's going
Wow.
on now. Like, smart employers will know.
Yeah, we will catch you. And like a week is like, that's a
Oh,
pretty good turnaround.
we were pretty proud of ourselves. Like, we caught that one
Yeah,
pretty quick.
that's
Yeah.
wow. The shadiest thing I ever had folks do. We hired a bunch of consultants at the bank at one of the. Actually, I think it might have been at Nomura, and there was like a scheme. They were badging each other in. Like one guy would come in and then badge 3 or 4 people in, and then that's how we would track. We'd match the timesheet to the badge ins, right? And that became very, very fast. That was, but not a week. That was like probably took us a billing cycle. So that was probably a month.
Yeah.
But
Well,
like,
bigger company is harder.
yeah, it's a little slower. Yeah, no, a little bit slower. But yeah, that's wild.
Crazy.
I can't imagine imposter. Like I've heard of imposter syndrome, but not like that.
Well, wait, I forgot the best part. When
Oh,
she came on, when she came on to talk to Mike, when we decided to let her go, she showed up with a wig and glasses to try to look more
Trying to look a little
like
bit more
the
like
first
her.
picture. So I actually had 4 pictures. It was a pretty funny
I think you got a pretty good leg. If it came to legality, you got a decent leg to stand on with 4 different images.
Yeah.
That
So
is that's something.
you have to continue to adjust your sort of interviewing screening techniques, and especially in this remote world we live in, right? So it was one of our many lessons learned along the way.
Wow, but I think for me the winner is like, is that your apartment? Yeah,
Yeah, it's my apartment.
really? Like you've got
Those
workstations.
computers that look like a training room. Don't worry about it. Look away.
Yeah.
No, that's just how we roll here. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is that's a gem. Okay, that's a good one. I have to say it wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So how about that's great. So how about the most creative way a candidate has tried to stand out? And that could be good or bad, but typically people try to do something, creative to stand out. What's your story there? If you have any good ones?
So I was thinking, and the story that came to mind was somebody who ended up standing out. I'm not sure it was them trying to be creative, but a little backstory is that I worked for a company a while ago that had adopted pretty heavily this whole competency-based interviewing technique. So for those who don't know what that is, it's when you sort of enumerate all of the competencies that you have for the position, and then you try to write interview questions that get a response related to each one of those competencies. So if the competency is we're looking for somebody with Python development skills, then the question would be something along the lines. And it's typically trying to get a question that's more than a yes or no answer, right? You're trying to write a competency. So so in any case, this company had sort of adopted that to an extreme level, to the point where they were doing case studies, right, as part of it. So you would come in for an interview, and they would present you a case study and basically leave you in a room with a description of the case study and some materials around it, and ask you to basically put together, somewhat of a plan and system context, diagram, and some relative things, whatever. And they would come back in an hour later, a panel of 4 people, and interview you. And so this one particular person that I had left the company, and we were actually doing business, providing some consultants back into the company. So this person came into this and went through this process and gave them the most thorough, answer or response to the case study, and to the point where the interview was effectively over, and they were continuing on, like wanting to solve the case study. And so the client's reaction to it was pretty funny, because they were like, if this is how diligent this person is in an interview, like, in a fictitious case study situation, like we have to have him.
Yeah,
So,
that actually, that's maybe he stepped into an accidental good strategy, right?
yeah. Some people might have thought he was a little OCD or something, but it worked out really well, and it was pretty funny. But it's kind of a neat way to go through that type of interviewing is when you have time. It takes a lot more prep, obviously.
Sure.
And they had gotten to a read into a situation where they had a number of these sort of prepackaged case studies for different jobs and things.
Interesting.
They were able to kind of review. So
that's wild. Wow. Okay. You know what I realized I didn't ask, and maybe you can explain the difference between your two organizations.
Sure.
Open with that. I'm sorry. See if I can move on.
That's fine. So Spyglass MTG is a consulting firm, which was the first company that we had. Actually used to be part of a bigger company, and spun out on its own. And it's a consultancy specifically focused on Microsoft technologies. So we do data and more specifically data AI and security and cloud around Microsoft technologies. So it's a more of a boutique type of consultancy, more high end. We have a lot of very skilled people on our team that are kind of the architect level. Whereas Tryton TC, what I like to say on that, like the main difference is that it's a more, lower end staffing. Like, I don't mean that the people are lower end. It's just that it is you have a temporary need, you have a temp to perm need, you have a permanent placement that you need. So it's a much less complicated model. There's a job description, and we are filling that said job description.
Like role-based consulting,
and we also do perm roles too. So just and mostly in the IT space. We go a little bit outside, but it's mostly around IT. So one's kind of more high end specific consulting, and one is more general staffing specific needs.
And like, what are the popular roles today? Like, I know it's probably all over the gamut, right? All over the run the gamut. But what are some of the more
Yeah, I mean, the things that, interesting enough, come to us are more of the niche roles that people can't find, right? So you've got some obscure technology, right, that you've been able to. So I'll reach out to Tryton and see which. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we get a lot of the more standard. You need a project manager. You need a .NET, engineer, those kind of things. But we'll get some really obscure things that take us some time to find. And luckily, we've got recruiting capabilities that are able to dig in and find those things. So.
Yeah, but a lot of people want to hire AI people, and there's not a lot of people with skills with AI right now, right? So that's a pretty big demand on the data side too. But that's such a broad category that lots of different things, Power BI, things like that. It runs the gamut, honestly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Is it finding like people will reach out to me, in different. Different times in my career, and especially lately, it's like, so, are there any openings at your company? I'm like, AI. It's like that's the push, and it's can you find the
and it's hard because there's not so much experience in AI, right? We've gotten very good at hiring people that have background in Python and other things that basically lead to being a good AI engineer or whatever that does help fill the roles. So we have the benefit on the Microsoft side of being very heavily involved in AI. So we kind of see a lot of people through that too. So
are there any particular use cases that you see standing out, or are they all over the map?
Use
cases? AI in general?
Oh. Yeah, AI in general. Because I can't.
That's such a loaded question.
I'm sorry.
No, but AI, I mean, I almost feel like AI is going to turn into a dirty word pretty soon because it's like it's so all encompassing of so many things. The way that we approach, so it started out exactly how you're saying. Use case. What's the use case? What's the use case? What's the use case that you're building? We do a lot in higher education, tons. So a lot of what we see are things like tutor bots and things like that, which is pretty common because there's actually some apps out there now. But we see AI evolving heavily into more of what is your AI strategy and your platform with which your company is going to do AI on. So that's really how we approach it now. And we build more of the foundational model and the data connection points that are going to make your AI actually useful with your company information and all of the models that are out there, kind of combining the two. So that's more how we approach it.
honestly, it's the classic problem, right? Of like, we've got to make sure the data is good, or I mean,
Right.
okay, like, you just can't throw.
We
Well, I
we
mean,
know, Tom, right? Data is king.
I know, I know. We've been doing this for how long? Like, I feel like, wait a minute, this sounds very familiar.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I know it's a cliche, but the garbage comment about in and out is
Yep.
true. But yeah, I have seen. I tell you, the one interesting use case that I've seen on the interviewing space, which was a fascinating example, was using artificial intelligence, like running your resume, putting in the job description, running your resume through it, and being like, "Can you tailor, my resume for this
Yeah,
job?"
that's a good one.
Which I
Yep.
thought was a pretty good one. But then my buddy, he works at another AI company, he said, "Yeah, but then what you want to do is then say, okay, now pretend you're the hiring manager looking at this job, and now tweak my resume. Like, tell me what's wrong with my resume for this job." I was like, "Oh, that's good." You're getting this sort of other perspective.
I
I was
mean,
like,
I
"Okay."
use AI all the time. We use it for marketing. We use it for, and it's pretty good. It's gotten pretty good. So yeah, I think, it's crazy because we deal so much with education.
Sure.
AI is going to be prevalent. My kids are in high school. By the time they get to college, it's going to be used in every classroom. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way it's not going to be, because if you try, these teachers that are trying to basically like keep it out and say they're not going to use it, and I feel like you're now not teaching the kids how work's going to be, because everybody is going to use AI to do their
That's
job. Everybody.
exactly right. Yeah, I can't agree with you. I find, like, somebody had made a suggestion to try one of the algorithms for one of the AI tools for writing code. I was like,
Hmm.
how's it going to write code? Right. So I did this. I put in, I've got like, my hard drive on my Mac is getting a little full. So I'm using like an external drive, and I'm slob with my files. So I'm like, I've got a copy here, I've got a copy there. How do I keep them in sync? And I could still, I was very proud of myself. I could still read and write some shell scripts. So I'm like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. And it wrote this thing, and I was like, I understand what it's doing. I mean, the core of it's this one command, whatever. But then I'm like, you know what? I need to verify before you just go ahead and run this. Like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's put in some verification checks. I was like, all right. And I'm watching it literally rearrange the code and putting this. I was like, oh my God.
It's
The
crazy.
engineers have engineered themselves possibly out of jobs,
Oh
because like
yeah.
it was wild to watch. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, it didn't work, but still I could
But
debug it.
that's why you have to know how to use it, right? So if the people that use AI to make their job better are the ones that are going to win, definitely.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I think it's yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think some of the
what's
stuff.
your yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
I think some of the use cases we've seen in the medical field, or or even insurance, where you've got all kinds of piles of data, right? I'm talking about documentation data, right, where people have to review and all of that. That's where it's so powerful, not to replace what they're doing, but to speed it up, right? So you just to be competitive, you're going to have to be able to use these tools to keep the pace, right? And there's great cost savings. There's new product services you can you can develop using those techniques. So it's definitely going to be a mind changing, paradigm shifting, thing that we're getting into in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it's. How about the have you heard, or are your clients asking you for the buzzword du jour of agentic artificial
Oh
intelligence?
gosh, yes, agentic.
Let me guess, you guys do that really well, right?
Oh, we know how to do that.
Oh,
I
of
mean,
course.
it's basically like we were saying, the service oriented architecture of AI. That's what it
That's
is.
it. Right. It's like, okay, got it. Yeah,
It's just
I
the
agree.
new buzzword.
It is.
This
Yeah, it's funny
agent
how the
talks
old
to this agent, and this agent knows
yeah.
this, and this
Ooh.
agent knows that, and then they talk together, and it's
And they
amazing.
touch each other, and they need an orchestration engine to make the work.
Uh-huh.
Oh, real? Oh, okay. Tell me more about this. It's like a maestro, but
Yep,
One of those fancy new words people just like to say.
it's
totally.
very,
I'm
very true.
going to work into my conversation as I order my coffee in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah, we make fun of ourselves with that stuff. Oh, the agentic.
No, you have to, right? You have to,
Yeah.
especially when you've seen the trend over like a couple of cycles. It's like, okay, I've seen that. This is version
Yeah.
3. Awesome. What is your most memorable excuse, or you've heard for being late, or missing an interview? I'm sure,
I
given
feel
the
like we've
volume.
heard them all.
Yeah, I'd
I
love
will
to. What's
definitely
your favorite?
say, like, the death in the family has been used God knows how many
Oh,
times. So that which is terrible, right? Like,
that's terrible. It just feels so
don't
bad.
lie about that. That's icky.
Yeah, it's icky.
One of the best ones that I had was someone telling me that they missed the interview. They didn't show up. And their excuse was they had to take their dog to the vet. Now, if you're going to say that, like say like your dog was on its deathbed and I was panicking and I had to take my dog, but it was like, oh, the vet had an opening and I took the dog for like a checkup. Let's just say that's the last time I talked to that person.
No, normally we have a one pass rule, right? You get one
mistake.
mulligan, or
No.
for whatever reason is whatever. But
Yeah.
when you have to come up with something like that, it's you're sort of sending a message to us.
Yeah, honestly, look, I'm a fundamental believer in telling the truth.
Yes.
All the time. Like
we always try to give the benefit of the doubt,
but in that case, show me the dignity to lie to me at least.
Exactly. like say your dog was on his deathbed. Give me something.
I'm at least.
And this person was actually surprised that I didn't want to talk to them again. And I was like, yeah, nope.
Well, I mean, we gotta discuss. Let's have a conversation about prioritization.
Yep. Clearly, I'm not a priority. Clearly, you don't want this job that bad.
Yeah, right. Or maybe you might want to consider a job at the vet because it's certainly more interesting. So have you ever had like somebody? We all bomb interviews, right? Have you ever hired somebody who's bombed an interview?
I think the answer is yes. We have a team-based interview approach, right? We start with an HR screen, we get into technical qualifications, and then somebody else might be looking at more general consulting skills, and we get to a final management review from Dori or myself or whoever. So
sure.
There's a progression. So depending on what you bomb, right? Obviously, if it's a core technology skill that we're interviewing on, we bomb, but we've certainly had some people that along the way, people didn't have a good feeling about, and so it took a little bit of adjusting to, okay, how are we going to, either have, if there's 3 people that have met that were great and somebody had a really bad experience, well, again, everybody gets one mulligan, right? But let's dive back in and set up another discussion, try to address whatever those concerns were, right? But yeah, some people, like you said, they start down a certain frame of mind in an interview and sort of can't break out of it. And, next thing you know, the 30 minutes or 45 minutes, however long it is up. And so, if they can kind of, start over and reset.
Yeah.
Sometimes
another chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so it's interesting. Your first step along the path is the HR. Like, and is that a showstopper at that point? Like, do they have like, don't even talk to this person kind of thing? Or is it, they're just a step in the process?
Yeah, no, I think it's typically our HR screen is really, again, it goes back to, are we in the ballpark on salary? Do you understand the role? Okay. Where are you located? All of those types of, are you authorized to work in this country?
A good one.
Yeah.
Are
you not an imposter of someone else?
I was just going to say, like, are you you?
Some of those types of things. And, a general technical fit or whatever we're trying to get at before we pass you on and get into. So those are the things we do before you jump into the next stage of more deep technical qualifications.
Got it. What does your cycle typically last for? Because I know I've interviewed a lot, and sometimes like, it can be months. I can imagine, you go through that kind of cycle, but what does your typical cycle run for?
Depends. I think it's a big depends, right? Like we are smaller companies, so we tend to be, I think, much faster than industry. But right now, with how the economy is kind of slowed and a lot of things, we're definitely slower because we have to wait for things to happen on our side with clients and big projects and other things before we can add to the team. So
that makes sense.
I mean, it's nice being small because when we need to be agile, we can. And I don't know what our shortest, from HR screen to offer might have been, but it may have been as short as 2 days or something.
I was going to say definitely less than a week. We have definitely hired people in less than a week when we had to.
That's some rounds, when positions have come up. So,
which may or may not have worked in our favor. I don't know, but we have done it.
Got it. Yeah, I wasn't going to go there. Don't worry. I was going to stick clear of that one. Yes, I fully understand the vetting process.
Yeah.
What was your worst interview experience, either for yourself or for a candidate or somebody you've gone through? It's a tough one.
For me, it was funny. I had a headhunter call me at one point and asked me if I wanted a job at a company, and wasn't really sure about the position itself. It was a good fit for me, but she talked me into going on I was pretty content in the position I was in. So I went off and took a day off to go interview with this company. And next thing you know, I realized I was set up for, I think it was something like 15 interviews, and they started at 7 a.m.
15.
And the final interview was with the hiring manager.
Services, Tom.
Financial services. And the final interview was at 5 p.m. And interestingly enough, to Dori's point, I've only had a couple times in my career I've had to interview for a quote unquote real job, right? However, being in consulting most of my career, I've had to interview dozens, if not 100 times for consulting, right, positions that I was being put forward for, especially in early days of my career. But you learn how to, when you get an interview, how to sort of talk and keep the conversation going. And what I realized over the course of the day was, the first couple of interviews, I was talking a lot about what I did, whatever. And the more I got into it, and it's exhausting because these were 30 minutes, maybe 45-minute interviews, and that you're getting through, and you sort of just get kind of the other person talking, right? And next thing you know, the 30 minutes is up, right? And they left feeling great because they talked about themselves for 20 to 30 minutes.
So true.
A good strategy as a candidate.
Yes. Well, because after the third or fourth interview, I was certainly tired of talking about myself. But I'd say it was high volume, low quality, right? That like when I look back, whoever was putting together there, and I think it was one of those organizations where, quote unquote, the firm, they wanted everybody to sign off. This is the person we're bringing in. So they wanted everybody to have a little bit, but nobody was getting deep, and it was kind of a turnoff. And the funny part of the story is 2 or 3. I didn't take the job, and because the headhunter told me, well, how did it go at the end of the day? And I said, well, it was an interesting day. I said, but I'm really not interested in the position. So, and she said, well, why don't you finish the interview process first? And I said, I'm not done. I'm not taking a second vacation day to have 15 more interviews. But 2 or 3 years later, I went back and interviewed for a more interesting position, and ended up interviewing with, of the 15 people I met that day, probably 10 of the same people.
Oh, wow.
2 or 3 years earlier. Again, didn't end up being a fit, but it was kind of funny. But yeah, companies have interesting strategies when it comes to interviewing. Again, I get the spirit of, we want everybody to have a chance to, but if you need that many people to make a decision, there's something wrong. But more importantly, nobody's getting a really good sense of what this candidate can do by having these little 30-minute snippets,
And your candidate experience is terrible.
Oh, terrible.
I can't.
Yeah.
I've done marathon sessions, and they prep me for them, but it's like 5.
And even lunch was an interview. So I mean, there was no break. It was,
you must have slept for
Yeah.
It was a long day.
Oh, that's rough.
That triggered a memory for me
please.
Like I said, like my first job out of college, I was in for 10 years. And then I ended up following someone to several jobs after that. So it was a really easy interview process for the most part. But when I finished that first job that I was in for 10 years, the company had been acquired. So there was like a group of people that left at the same time. And I went with a group of people to a group interview at a company that wanted to hire all of us to become like a specific practice in this company. It was a bigger consulting.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that, in hindsight, they interviewed us in a hotel, and I think there was 4 of us. And I was the most junior out of the 4. So I was, just 10 years into my career. I was on the younger side. And I remember thinking, this is really weird. And then we interviewed together, and then I think I broke off and interviewed with someone individually, and I definitely had a weird vibe. But because we were all going together, I was like, trust the process. It was my first time ever, aside from my first job out of school in tech, interviewing. So I ended up taking the job, and let's just say I left after 3 months. Hindsight, I should have known. Should have known.
Yeah, that's that listen to your gut advice, right?
Yes, for sure. Like, if you get a bad feeling, you're probably right. It's not going to get better.
Yeah, especially at the beginning. I can't tell you. I had a 3-month. I had a 3-month on my resume way back when, and it was like,
yeah, that doesn't end up on the resume, right?
Yeah, there's you kind of, that's when, this is the year I decided to drop the month.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I distinctly remember that it was set up. It was like a bait and switch. It was actually a Massachusetts-based company that was software company that was trying to do like a turnaround, and they were bringing a whole bunch of us over, and it was like it was just a bad, I left like, well, can the money be this good? And
if it seems you too good, right? It usually
is.
That's
I know it's an old saying, but it's a valid one. How do you deal with a situation like with the team, like when there's a conflict where, maybe you want to hire a person, or, you really like the candidate, or the team does, and there's like disagreement and misalignment with that, where either you don't agree or they don't agree. And how do you get to resolution of that one? I've had that more than once. I'm curious how you resolve that.
yeah, and it goes back to our sort of interview process and how we're trying to qualify people. But if we get through that process and somebody has concerns, it's really trying to itemize what those concerns are and then set up another discussion, right? And try
And you
to
share that like with the candidate, like we want to resolve this thing.
we certainly can, yeah. If there's something that we didn't hear enough of,
Interesting.
sometimes it is. Sometimes it's if it's more of a consulting skill issue, then it might be
Usually have someone else go
yeah.
and interview.
So
Or you just bring both parties out, and you bring in a third party to be like, okay, let's
Correct.
talk about this. Yeah, that's good.
The
Reduce that
consulting
bias.
skills. Because it's really important for us to have people have consulting skills, right? We're consultants.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you have to be somewhat personable to be in this job, even though it's a technical job, which can be hard. So sometimes we will need to bring in someone else to test that skill out if we don't have a good feeling.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I there was an old saying, we were pre-sales engineers back when I worked at a software company. And what we really want is a really good engineer with a good user interface.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know that I want to frame it that way every time, but that's pretty much summed it up. Yeah, kind of summed it up nicely.
I like that one.
technically accurate.
Have you ever regretted not hiring someone? Like, have you ever gone through the process and been like,
it's funny. I really believe in like things work out for a reason, and there's definitely been people along the way that I've met that I really liked, that I interviewed, but there's for whatever reason it didn't work out. Like maybe the money was off, or we made them an offer and they turned us down. Those usually hurt the worst, but then there's a reason why later on I'm like, ooh, glad we dodged that bullet.
okay.
I can't think of a time that we decided not to or didn't work out that I had like huge regret. Like I think everything works out for a reason. If you're meant to work with people, like anything, someday you probably will.
Yeah. Usually the time when you're someone, if we do make an offer that someone doesn't accept, then, you may feel bad at that moment, right? But, 3 months later, we've hired somebody else who ends up being a better fit.
Yeah, I just feel like things always work out. There's always
I like that philosophy. That's good. That's very good. What do you think is like, again, this is one of my favorites for working with the folks new in their career. Like, what is the single most important thing you look for in the interview process?
So and it goes back to our consulting skills, but I start the interview by asking people, listen, I've read your resume, but give me your story. So, and really what I'm testing them on is, can they talk articulately? Because if you can't talk about yourself, right, there's probably a problem there, right? But
there you go.
Can you summarize, in 3 to 5 minutes, sort of, and just how people choose to tell that story always, illuminates a lot about, their personality and who they are. Because some people will just dive in, and next thing you know, they're down rat holes and all over the place, and 10 minutes later they're still talking, and I'm trying to interrupt. Other people are able to kind of give me that quick, 3, 4, 5 minute
punchy,
and then a pretty good summary at different levels, but they're able to think on their feet. And again, that's the kind of thing where you're going to be in our business in many situations facing out the customer, having to do that kind of thing. So it's a great way to start an interview in general, but it's a great test for me in terms of what I'm looking for and how they can articulate things.
Yeah, you get that extra bang for the buck, right? Because if they could articulate what your company does, because somebody's going to ask you that. Tell me about your company. What do you do? If they can't get punchy about themselves, how are they possibly going to do that in a way?
Well, and that just goes with their interpersonal skills, right? So when I interview, it's typically at the end, and like I'm not going to interview someone for their technical skills. Someone's already done that.
Yeah.
So, and I don't interview everybody, but if I do, I'm really looking for, is there a personality here? Can I connect with this person? And most important, are they coming at this with a go-getter, I want to have this job attitude? And if there's one thing I can emphasize more, especially to the younger folks that are coming in, like you have to show the company and the people that are interviewing you that you want this job, that you're not, don't try to talk a million ways about why you're a great fit, but all the things that you're going to do to make yourself a great fit, and all the things you want to learn, and all the things you want to go after. Just in general in the workforce, I have seen a huge degradation. I don't know if it's COVID or what, of that go-getter attitude. That I think a lot of it's the remote work. I think there's a lot of factors in it. But having that self-motivation, I feel like is really important.
That's why I love the questions, right? Because it tells me that not to just read our website, and that's kind of, uh, table stakes at this point. You come in knowing something out, but if you actually thought about it, right,
Yeah.
that thinking leads you to coming up with insightful questions, right? That you're looking to get. And the thing that's great that I love is, and again, because you go through multiple interview stages, is that when you get somebody who comes into the second or third interview and has done some homework on things that had come up in the first or second interview,
Great.
and even we've had people that literally have gone off and taken some short training, on something, knowing they've got a couple of days to,
That's awesome.
so
Right. They
Yeah.
love that, right? Like they did on their
Yeah.
own. They wanted to, they want the job. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. It's funny you say that because I hadn't so much considered the COVID factor, but yeah, we're not connecting as humans as much anymore. We're like, what
No,
do
well, we're
I-
not, right? Because we're on videos
Yeah.
and we're not
Yeah.
in person. I do think this latest wave of uh, downturn, I guess, that we're seeing is going to force people to go back to the office more, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing.
Mm.
But the reality is, Mike and I talk about this all the time. This is the new world. Like I like working remote. Like, I mean, I have for decades, but just the regular touch points, we used to go in at least a few days a week or every
Absolutely.
other week, or, and even that has been degrading. I think that has caused just overall a lack of, the same energy that we
Mm.
had with being in person. We were always trying to figure out ways to make that better. And I think it's something that as employers, we consistently have to think about and
Yeah.
focus on. But as employees coming in and as interviewees, like, I think that's really, really important. What's your attitude? Like, I want a positive attitude and I want a go-getter who wants to do more.
Because you just
How do I get to the next step in my career? That's a really important thing,
because you think about
About
all those remote
that question.
all those remote and managers out there have the same problem these days, right? How do I know and trust that the 10, 15, 20 people in my organization are working? Right? You have that fundamental problem. And so when you're hiring people, that's what you're thinking about is, okay,
Sure.
is this the kind of person I think is going to come in and have that energy and self-motivation and drive, to
And
get
bring
things
that.
done?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm not, walking by their desk 10 times a day.
Yeah. How do you track that? Is like I like some companies use like an OKR model, they use expectations, they do different types of things. Like how do you is it more client feedback that drives that conversation? Like how do you balance that out?
Yeah. If you're getting out like just our general performance management process.
Yeah, if you can share, whatever you're comfortable sharing, of course.
Yeah, I
I know.
mean, it's and we have, right. We're a smaller company. We don't have some of the formality that the large organizations, which I like.
Mm.
We've developed a much, I think, what is a lightweight, really efficient
Mm.
performance management process, which starts with goal setting at the beginning of the year and reviews and hopefully regular feedback. And I always say to people, if we're telling you feedback at the end of the year you haven't heard, then shame on us, right?
Yeah.
But it's as best we can about quantifying metrics that show in our business, right? Again, as we started off talking about, we're a billable consulting business. So sharing with people, those metrics along the way about how they're doing. Some things they have control over, some things they don't. But, trying to understand what they're doing and how it's influencing our business. And that's the
Mm.
nice thing about working in a smaller organization as opposed to some 50,000 person organization is you have a much bigger impact on the overall success of the business and trying to, get people to understand those connections, that line of sight.
And my philosophy is always, I mean, you see things, right? Someone, and everybody has lives, but someone ducked out for the afternoon, didn't tell anyone, and yet an important meeting or whatever it might be. I like to give feedback pretty immediately that, like,
Yeah.
yep, that's not okay. And
Yeah.
in the future, you need to do this. And, we try to maintain a pretty open and honest communication with our people. So like Mike said, like nothing, if you at the end of the year finding out that we're finding you a little bit unreliable and like you better have heard that, and I'm quite sure you probably did.
You did. Yeah.
um but like technically there's not any online tools, unfortunately. We're not spying on anybody. Like we're
Sure.
trusting that they're adults and they're
Sure.
getting their work done. But if they're missing deadlines, if they're not showing up to things, if we're getting the worst is if we're getting feedback from the clients. Like that's
Yeah.
usually the last place. We usually catch up before that.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, it's like
Interesting.
find out quick.
I have to say, like, even situational, like you dipped out for an afternoon, for something, like if you communicated that up
It's
front, you're
fine.
like, look, I
Yeah.
told the client, I told you, I'm not going to be here. I've got a thing to do. I've got to take my dog to the vet.
Again, we all have to do stuff like that. You
Right.
just
No, but it's
schedule it, block your calendar, tell everybody it's
make
fine.
people know, and then it's not like you're just dipping and you're not, you're unreliably not available. Yeah, no, I think that's a very common mistake, I think. Um,
Especially for new employees that just came out of school. I think that I actually do think that it's better for recent grads to go work at an office. I think it's a lot better for them to have the interaction and to have the management right there.
yeah,
But for a lot of people, that's not an option. So unfortunately it's on them to try to train themselves into that motivation. Like, yeah, you can't really work with the TV on all day. Like that doesn't work. I remember having that conversation with someone once. This is years ago, being like,
seriously.
you don't get on the phone with the TV on in the background. Like that is not a thing. Like
In what world is that okay? Like, and then it's probably is like Jerry Springer or something.
God knows, I don't even know, but
I
yes.
don't even know if Jerry's still around. I have no idea. I don't watch TV. That's insane. What what do you think are, like, how do you identify the, like, key metrics for your team's performance? Like, are there particular things you're looking for, like certain metrics or certain, is it more attitudinal? Is it more judgment based? Is it quantifiable? How do you think
Yeah, I
about
mean,
that?
we in our billable business, there's a key metric that's really easy to measure, right? Which is how
Of
much are we
course,
how
of
much are
course,
we able to how much are we able to utilize you?
of course.
But that
Sure.
aside, I mean, we have a number of things we call it contributions to Spyglass, right? Where we try to
Okay.
itemize. Here's how we want you to contribute to the company because we want everybody to be fully engaged in the success of the company, right? And again, you
Sure.
can have a big impact. So it's understanding there are places you can help with recruiting, you can help with
Sure.
you can help with marketing effort, you can help with sales, you can help with development of our practice assets. There are a number of ways that everybody. So we try to itemize those things, and on a quarterly basis, we're having discussions with people, and eventually tying it to bonus programs, right? So, it's a
Uh,
pretty clear, uh, um, again, line of sight for people to say, okay, here's how is everybody going to do all those things every quarter? No, but
sure.
developing your skills, all those types of things are ways you can help build yourself. The nice thing about being in consulting is we want to develop people, right? In a lot of big organizations, and I've had this experience in my career, when you go quote unquote internal, right? You're sort of an expense to be managed, right? Where in consulting organization, we're trying to grow you and more of you,
Yeah.
right? That's our business, right? So
Your
we're heavily
products,
invested.
your products, so to
Yeah,
speak, right?
and we want people who are heavily invested in the company, and so it should be a good mutually beneficial. You develop your skills, helps us get you out there on more projects and accelerate your career and all those things. It's when it works well, it's everybody benefits.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's funny. I've been out of consulting for a few years, so I forgot the utilization metric is one of the key ones, right?
Yep.
And yeah. And then on the managerial front, are there any certain characteristics you look for, like, or you really think are important what makes a good manager in your perspective?
I mean, I think from a management style, first of
Hmm.
all, it always starts at the top down, right? Whatever the tone is set at the top is what goes down. So I personally, myself and Mike, I mean, we've worked together for a long time. We try to lead with, open, like I said, open and honest communication. We try to set an example for others. So like I can't say I would be able to pass these technical certs and other things, but if I'm asking something of someone, I want to try to pitch in and help however I can too. So set an example
Hmm.
by that. But really just have a atmosphere where people feel like they can speak up, or people feel like they have a voice, and they're heard. As I always say, I'm not always going to listen, and don't be offended when I say that's not a good idea, because it might not be, or it doesn't make sense for our business.
Sure.
But we like to have kind of that collaborative atmosphere. And I think, any leader that doesn't lift their people up and give them, tries to take credit, or doesn't give the credit where the credit's due with the team, that's another really big one. So yeah, I don't know, Mike, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I think modern day is we're trying. Any good manager is trying to help their employee become successful, right? It's about getting obstacles out of the way for them so they can do what they need to do, and things flow well from there, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think a reflection of a good manager is the success of their team, right? To the point where they're helping them grow.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's great. Okay, second to last question. I always like to set that expectation. What is the best way to ask for a raise?
Mm. So, my opinion, the best way to ask is to approach it more internally by yourself. Like,
Mm,
what can I do, or
hmm
what do you need to see out of me to get to the next level?
I love it.
What do you want to see to make me a senior consultant or a
Sure.
senior manager, or what can I work on over the next 6 months, rather than, well, the eggs are costing me $12 now, so I need a cost of living raise. That
Yeah,
really doesn't go over that well, honestly,
sure.
with the managers, especially like in a business like ours where the rates haven't gone up. So I mean, I feel your pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. You're getting the pressure the other way to lower your prices.
100%. So it's all about how you approach that conversation. And I think anytime I've ever asked for a raise, it's always been like, what do I need to do? Because I know that this is the next level and I want to be at this level. So what do I
Sure.
need to do? And I think that is the most, you know, non-confrontational way. And it also
Mhm.
shows that you want to improve yourself.
Excellent. Mike, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think I like a good conversation where somebody has given some thought to what's happening in the market and with the
Mm,
company and all those things before. Again, they're not just looking for, I make X, I want to make X plus whatever,
percent.
next
Yeah.
year. It's more of an understanding of, hey, I've done these things. To Dori's point, we had a conversation. I think I'm here now. I think I provide more value because
Yeah.
of this. I think, understanding the market. Again, we see it, the market's been a wild ride the past 5 years, right? From
Sure.
COVID and
It
now
really
to where we are
has.
now.
Yeah.
Salaries have been up and down. And so understanding the general, landscape of what's happening
Well,
with
and I do think that the landscape is changing because
Mm,
go back 20, 30 years. It used to be, the whole thing was you wanted to stay at one company as long as you could, right? And you would get you would get bumps to like new levels, but then you get
yeah.
like cost of living raises. And I mean, we're seeing it all over the place right now, that those big companies, that's how they operated, with people just getting cost of living. There's huge layoffs happening, and it's all those people targeted because they're now out of a salary band that role is worth. And so I do think that's a hard thing for people to grasp now. I mean, even personally, like, I get it, but like there's certain point where your salary band in that role hits a ceiling.
Yeah.
And you can make money other ways through working to the next level, or
Mm,
working really hard on your bonus or whatever it might be.
sure.
But I think that's a just change in the market, like, and um, it's not about just hanging out and expecting this and this. That's not how businesses can run.
It just doesn't work. I had an employee who just wanted to get promoted, and it was like it was the only thing that mattered. He's like, I don't even care about the raise. I just want to, I want to change my title. I've got to get to this next level. And he's been at the same level for a really long time, and there's a reason for it, right?
Yeah,
And then you
unfortunately, that's the
they're
case,
like,
right?
what is the thing you need to do? Like, here's the thing. Look, this is, the nice thing about having companies that have well-defined role profiles is like, look, this is what you're expected at this level. This is what you're expected at this level. Just give me examples. Give me the examples that you're meeting this bar. And, it was like, oh, I've been here 7 years. And I'm like, well, 5 years, whatever the number was, right? I was like, you don't get
That's not
that.
how it works.
It's not how it works,
Yeah.
it's a conversation, but it's necessary to
yeah.
frame it as, what can I like the way you put it, is what can I do to help blank the business, grow it, change it, myself, to meet new needs, things like that. And
To
yeah,
hit that next level, right?
to hit
And
the
it,
next
and if
level. Yeah.
and then if you had that all written out, which we kind of do, but it's hard, right? So, but you can present the person with that, like, this is what you need to do,
Yeah.
right?
But
This
then
is,
your
like you
manager,
said.
the good manager, like can articulate, these are the steps you need to take, right? And then
Yeah.
they can then advocate on your behalf. Sorry, Mike, you're gonna say something.
Well, I think it's important for people to assess their own ambition level, right? Because ambition is not a bad word. It's not, it's being
Yeah.
not be lack. Some people just want to have a certain career,
Yeah.
and they're happy with the kind of thing they do, and those people can be some of the most valuable employees. You
Sure.
understand the certain compensation model that goes along with that, and if you're
Sure.
content, that's fine. There's a certain point where if you're super ambitious, like you said, you may get to a point where your organization just isn't offering you, that, and so you're going to have to look at other options, right? So
Right. I mean, yeah.
but just understand who you are, and because I felt bad that there have been people that I wouldn't say they're not ambitious, but they're not ambitious from a career. I want a higher title. I want tons of money. They like what they do and they're getting better at what they do, but
Mm,
they're sort of content in the role that they're in. And I've
mm.
seen some of those people feel almost guilted, like I have to go for this promotion, or I have,
I have to be a
because I'm
manager.
not,
Some people
I
don't want
don't,
to be
Manage-
managers.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
I get
yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the illustrator of people who have taken that next step, right? There's the Peter principle, whatever you want to call it, right? To
Yeah.
that position of even just call it discontent, right? Where now I'm doing something I didn't want to do, was happy
Mm.
you're there, but I felt like I had to do this, just understand where, what what's really important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm an IC now, an individual contributor for the first time, and I don't know, I've managed for 30 something years. And I miss a team caring and feeding for my peeps, right? I love that part of the job, but I'm very, very, very happy in a different role right now. I have time for
I can
podcasts.
understand that.
Yeah, right. It's good. It's good to see both sides, but I've been doing it for so long. And it's also good to see the other side. I have much more respect for my manager now,
For
but I'm
sure.
also a bit of a pain in the neck too. So that's been a good balance. So okay, thank you first of all for taking so much time to do this. I really appreciate it. Last question is, what advice would you give your younger self? And pick a point in the career, whether it's beginning at some point, that you really would tell your younger self.
Mm.
You want to go first, or me?
You go. You're not
Nice.
ready either.
This is why you're a good team. This is why you're a good team. I'm not ready for that one yet. Go, Mike.
I thought, I think I had someone say to me a few years ago saying, you got to find a niche in the world, right? And
Mm.
so, I guess my niche has been, in my career, has been in general IT consulting, right?
Mm.
I feel like if I had anything I would do different, having gone back, it would be to maybe focus more in industry, right? Because
Mm.
I floated more, and you get to a certain point where in the consulting industry, I don't think it's, sort of horizontal skills are no longer as valued as really vertical in-depth skills, right? So,
Interesting. Okay.
so I never, I jumped around, and I started off working in writing. My first job was working for Sheraton Hotels, right, on their system, and then I went off and worked for a shipping company, and then in financial
Sure.
services, and then in insurance, and then all over the map in terms of industries. It was fun. It was, but
Learned a ton.
but I found so there's a lot of positive, like you said, a lot of learnings that came from that, and understanding different industries and how things work. But I was always a little jealous of people who went really deep
Mm.
and are really subject matter experts. And I think when you get into later stages of your career, that can be a big asset. So it worked out. I'm okay, but
We'll
He's
talk.
doing pretty good.
Yeah, he's doing good. Yeah, that's good.
As you said that, I was thinking, like, what do I say to my kids? Because they're both in high school, right? And
Mm.
my dad said something to me when I was younger that stuck with me, and I always say this: is find the job that pays the most and sucks the least, which sounds really negative, but it's really not, because you have to decide for yourself. I believe this, and this is the advice I give my kids. Like, what level of comfort in life do you want? Because that is a direct correlation to how much money you're going to make.
Yeah.
And you can get jobs that you're miserable because you're working 1,000 hours and you're working with people you don't like, and it's things you don't like. So that's why I'm saying sucks the least. Like, I love what I do. I'm
Yeah.
really lucky, but a lot of that too is the people that you work with. So
Mm.
that the other advice is finding the type of people that you like working with. And people happens to be in consulting are very personable, but like I said, back when I was going to college, I thought I wanted to be a vet. I mean, I can't even imagine, like, what was I thinking, right? So like, doesn't go with my personality at all. And I try to tell my kids, there's no way as a ninth grader you know what you're gonna do when you
There's
grow up.
no way.
Like
Yeah.
we want them to all say they're gonna be a lawyer, or they're gonna be, they're all gonna do business, but that could be a million different things. But it's
Sure.
really about finding, and I think that does go to what Mike said. Like, my dad was a political consultant, and that was like a niche he fell into, and it
Mm.
was very specialized, and he did really well, and it afforded him the ability to like work remotely from the Keys for the last 25 years of his career. I mean, so you just have to figure it out along the way. You're not going to know. But it is also important to think about, does this job have potential to make the kind of lifestyle that I want to live?
That's it. No, I think that's really, thank you both for sharing. I think it's really excellent advice. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate you both very much for taking the time out of your busy days. And this is so much fun. So thank you.
Well, it's great to see you, Tom. Thanks for
Yeah,
having
you as
us.
well.
Yeah, really fun conversation.
Yeah, totally appreciate it.